And I'm the CEO of Pledge 1%, and I'm your MC for the afternoon. So this next session is called, oops, I lost this one. There Goes the Neighborhood, the Future of Tech Hubs. Our panel of international tech leads are ready to debate the future of tech hubs and the burning question, will cities like London, Shenzhen, and Silicon Valley continue to grow, or will they burst? With Jess Kelly of News Talk, please welcome Adam Valkin of General Catalyst Partners, Yossi Vardi, founder of International Technologies, Zach Supala, founder and CEO of Particle, and Bedy Yang, managing partner of 500 Startups. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. You are most welcome to this panel discussion. Thank you all for joining us. We do have the Slido, which I think the details should appear in a few minutes' time. That's your opportunity to ask questions, give us comments, or just say hello if you want. You're more than welcome to. So this is the second Irish person in a row taking this stage. But I have brilliant people from all around the world here now, and we're going to talk about the notion of tech hubs. What are they? Should you specifically base yourself there? And, what impact does it have on the wider community, I suppose? So, Yossi, we might start with you. Just tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're based.
Okay, my name is Yossi Vardi. I'm from Tel Aviv, which is a small city on the eastern side of the Mediterranean. In the last 20 years, I was angel investors with mixed results. I invested in 86 companies, 32 done exits, and 30 were closed. So I have a mixed reputation. That's the story.
A mixed reputation. Okay, Adam, same question to you. What do you do and where are you based?
Yeah, my name is Adam Valkin. I'm a managing director at a venture capital firm called General Catalyst. We have offices in Boston, New York, San Francisco, and Palo Alto. We are currently investing a $1.4 billion fund, and we invest anywhere from $100,000 to $100 million in internet and software companies, mainly in the US, but increasingly also in Europe and around the world. And just as a matter of background, I spent about 12 years doing venture capital in Europe, focused on places like Tel Aviv, where Yossi's from, but also other ecosystems like Berlin, Stockholm, Paris, London. And then I've spent the last 6 years focused on the US, mainly Boston, New York, San Francisco, LA.
You have the globe covered, basically. Yeah. You've been around. You've been around. And Bedy, then where are you from and what is it that you do?
So a managing partner at 500 Startups. We're early stage fund. We have around 400 million committed capital and invested in 60 countries. We have presence in around 20 different cities. And then I'm originally from Brazil, mostly based on the plane and sometime in Silicon Valley.
Okay. I can relate to the plane life. So let's start at the very beginning. What makes a tech hub? How many businesses or how much has to be in one place for it to become a hub? Adam?
Well, I think the notion of what a tech hub is has changed a lot over the last few years. And I think, when I think back to Europe at least, it was really around 2008-9, post-financial crisis, with Facebook, iOS, and Android as global distribution platforms, Amazon AWS in full force, that it really became easy or much easier to start a company from anywhere, have the infrastructure to get started, access to capital, and the ability to build products on a global stage. And from that point on, we saw a pretty rapid pace of tech hub development in different parts of the world, throughout the United States, throughout Europe, and even places like, very quickly, places like Finland and Belarus and Belgrade and Israel were essentially creating multi-billion-dollar companies on top of platforms like Facebook and iOS and Android. And I think that if you look at the number of tech hubs that exist today versus 10 years ago, it's like, it's truly unbelievable. But, there's supposed to be 150 tech hubs in Europe. There are many in the US where, 10, 15 years ago, it was much more constrained to, major cities like London, San Francisco in the Bay Area, etc.
Yossi, what's the tech scene like in Israel? It's an area that I don't know much about. I don't know anything about the tech scene. So what is it like?
It's very, very, very active. We create every year about 800 startups, new startups. About 300 of them don't survive, so we have an increase of 500 startups. Altogether, we have now in Israel something like 7,000 startups in like every conceivable area, with some areas which are more active than others, like cybersecurity. And the amount of VC money which goes to Israel, I think, is bigger than any European country. In spite of the fact that we are a small country, we are less than 9 million people, though together with China, we represent 20% of the world population.
Whoa. So I'm from Ireland, and our tech hub is very much confined to Dublin. That's our capital city. That's where all the action is. In Israel, is the tech scene confined to one specific area?
Okay, this is a very important question, and with your permission, I will generalize it a little bit.
Yes.
When you look on the ecosystem in the world where startups concentrating, they tend to concentrate in clusters. They are not spread evenly. You have it in Dublin, as you said, you have it in London, you have it in Paris, you have it in Berlin, you have it in Tel Aviv. In the United States, you have it in San Francisco, Austin, Texas, Boston. It tends to concentrate in cities, and the interesting thing that all these cities have some common things. And the common thing is not about finance. And also, it's not about universities. Sure, you need university, but there are many cities where you have universities and you don't have this concentration. And here what comes into play is the aspect of culture. I think that tech hub and tech ecosystem, the most important thing is to have a culture which lends itself into people helping each other, people being encouraged to be creative, people encouraged to take risk. And from that perspective, Tel Aviv is really the capital of startups. You have few startups in Jerusalem, you have some in Haifa, but the concentration is around Tel Aviv because Tel Aviv is a liberal city. It's celebrate diversity. In Tel Aviv, you can be of any gender you like to be, and you can come from whatever background, and the city and the people will embrace you. You have a very live, urban life. You can walk to the work. You have coffee shops, etc., etc. So when we talk about tech hubs or tech ecosystem, we always have to look at the culture. And last sentence, many people would like to replicate the success of the tech hubs or the tech ecosystems, but replicating culture is impossible. So this is the main challenge.
So, Bedy, as we make changes and we move to remote working, the work anywhere culture, is that going to impact the tech hubs? If people are not going into, open workspaces, if they're not going into offices, they're just working from home, are we going to see a shift?
Yeah. So, interesting component, I think maybe the question is, do you have to be in the same space? Because very often culture, it's a mix between the people that are there and the physical space component. As people become more remote, I think the question is, are there other tools that make them feel more interconnected, right? I think part of sometimes you are in very small population or a small ecosystem. The most important component is how connected you are to the rest of the world. If you build something, for instance, like in Israel, would you be able to expand very quickly to other places? So I think the question really is, what are the other tools that might be possible so that when people are not in the same co-working space, would they still be connected? I think the general answer is today, with all the online tools that are available out there, the need to be in the same space, I think, is smaller and smaller. And I think it becomes even more distributed where the hubs are. So instead of thinking like, what are the 20 cities, I think it's more like what are the 100, 200 cities that will have its own density and how they connect with each other. I think it's the interconnection of the hubs that is the most important part. And whether you're in the same space or not, I think it's helpful to be in the same space because very often you have very informal conversation that you're not planning to have. Therefore, a lot of like synergy might happen. But you can do that through online tools too.
So again, looking at, because it's where I'm from, in Dublin, the area where our tech hub is based, the rents have gone up. You know, it's just completely changed. And if you are a startup wanting to move into that space, if you want to live in that area, get office space in that area, it can be very costly, and not every startup can afford that. Adam, do you think that some startups, you know, it's the place to be, or should they bide their time until they get to a certain stage and then move into that space?
Yeah, I think typically with the emergence of any tech hub, they become sort of the hotspot areas that people want to be. And by and large, that's not a bad thing because, the higher the concentration and density of people doing the same kind of thing, trying to solve the same types of problems, trying to deal with the same kind of recruiting issues and fundraising issues and product and growth issues, the more smart people you have in a concentrated area, the higher likelihood you're going to have frequent conversations that are helpful to you and your business. And that's one of the great things about Tel Aviv or San Francisco or anywhere else. But then I do think the natural course of things is that the concentrations, so everyone wanted to be in New York, and then more and more startups were in Brooklyn, and the same thing will happen in Dublin and everywhere else. There'll be a new hotspot which becomes associated with where the very cost-conscious, high-hustle companies want to be because they think they can get everything that's comparable but at a much lower cost. But I do think that just around this point of tech hubs, and I think what Yossi said about culture is 100% correct. In my experience of looking at tech hubs that have emerged and are in the process of emerging, other than institutions and big companies that give off engineers like Google and Facebook do in the Valley and elsewhere, the thing that has helped the most, in my opinion, is successful entrepreneurs teaming up and deciding to give back to the community by angel investing, mentoring, advising, coaching, and just putting their hands up and saying, we're going to help more and more entrepreneurs get funded, build companies, recruit. And you've seen that in Paris, you've seen that in Tel Aviv, you've seen that in London, you've seen that in Berlin, and of course you've seen that in the Valley, where that's kind of absolutely part of how it works.
Every time he says Tel Aviv, I give him $5.
God, you're going to be rich at the end of this. In terms of looking to the future of tech hubs, if they are popping up everywhere, they're no longer going to be hubs. It's just going to be the norm. Or will they always be sort of confined to particular areas? Like, do you think that, could Ireland or could Israel just become a tech country rather than just having it confined to specific spaces? I've stumped the panel.
So I'm trying to understand the question. Do we think that it stays in the city or it goes to the country?
Yeah, so it could spread out. So if there are more, if you look to the US, for example, there are so many pockets of the country that are tech hubs. But I wonder if it'll just become the norm. I just wonder if the tech community will spread so vast that it will no longer be a notable thing where you have a tech hub in Austin, Texas, or whatever it may be.
I see. So when you have so many, maybe the density that happens is not that obvious. So what do you do around that? I think there are few components that is important. One is the culture piece of that. Another big important piece of it, it's actually how many investors and how sort of connected the downstream capital is in that market. Very often, if you don't have enough density and talent, and then the companies end up going where the client is, and or where the investors are, or where the talent is, right? So the three components, whether they have enough density of finding downstream capital, whether they can find clients there is really important, whether they can build their families there, whether they want to be in that city. I think those are important components to be added. So I think as you have 100 cities that could be considered a tech hub, actually I think that's pretty positive. Eventually, each city will need to find its own differentiation. I think in the earlier days, the first 20 cities can be very general. Like they can say, any great founder can go to Berlin, any great founder can go to London, any great founder can go to San Francisco, New York. But if you are sort of up and coming and then you are starting from scratch, I'll give you an example. Let's say if you want to build a tech hub in Turin, you need to find some sort of differentiation. There's really good universities, there's definitely capital there, but if you're starting very late and you want to attract talent, you want people to be well known around the world, to be a hub, it's very important that you find a very specific differentiation of why people might want to go there. Maybe it's the automotive, maybe it's the food, maybe it's the fashion. However you feel like you can build that differentiation that you can position. It's really almost like positioning of a brand, right? You think of a city, everyone want to work on the digital component, but you want to position yourself with a brand that everyone would recognize, oh, if I go there, I know I can find that.
It's interesting, Lisbon is becoming a tech hub now. This is my third time to Lisbon, each time for Web Summit. And every time I have seen the evolution of the tech scene, and people are coming here. There's construction going on to house people so they can base themselves here. It's incredible to see what a tech hub can do for an economy, for a local economy. Is that replicated around the world? Is that because, obviously, just talking from European, does it sort of feed back into the wider community?
I would like to suggest the following, going with your permission to your former question for a minute. Tech hubs are tend to develop around specific areas with specific industry. Because if you look how the industry develops, usually you will have a first success. The first success will lead to an exit. You will generate number of people which will benefit. They will become the angel investors. Usually they will do angel investing in a similar area. Also people who work in a big company, let's talk about Silicon Valley, Fairchild Industries, they will go and generate other industries in the same area. So you are not going to get it equal all over the United States. You are going to get semiconductors in Silicon Valley, life sciences in Boston, etc., etc. So this is regarding how we develop over a country.
Yes.
And I would also say that there are different levels of being a tech hub. So, becoming a city where there are lots of startups and lots of activity and some venture capital money and a good university that's putting out developers is great. But it's, when a city starts to support a very large company, the way Finland supported a Supercell, or Stockholm supports a Spotify, Boston supports a Wayfair, then things really begin to change and accelerate. Because all of a sudden you have companies that may have 1,000 or 5,000 engineers that are being trained at phenomenal companies, and those people are going to feed the openings at other companies, and many of those people are starting their own companies, having been trained under some of the best product leaders in the world. And I think that is kind of the ultimate question for a tech hub is, do you believe that it really has the potential to support a very big company? And in order to do that, you need to be able to support a large number of software developers that either have grown up in that hub or are willing to move to that hub.
Yeah.
And that is where you see some tech hubs tap out, because the companies can't grow big enough in those locations.
This is a fascinating topic, and we could talk about it for another 25 minutes, but I just see that our time is up, unfortunately. So thank you all for staying with us, and will you please thank our brilliant panel? Thank you so much.
Thank you.